So the 7 states of eastern India, the 7 sisters, are landlocked. They have no way to reach out to the ocean. We are the only guardians of the ocean. This is what Nobel laureate and chief advisor to Bangladesh government, Professor Muhammad Yunus, said in Beijing. Now he is making a strong pitch for the dragon to increase its footprints in Bangladesh and of course the Bay of Bengal. So as Dhaka and Beijing inked 9 agreements from infrastructure to trade to technical cooperation, how should India view Professor Yunus in Beijing, the radical Islamists in power in Dhaka and their closer engagement with Pakistan? Should India also be concerned about Bangladesh welcoming Chinese participation in Teesta River comprehensive management and restoration project, seeking a plan for the next 50 years? Joining me on this special broadcast is Lieutenant General Consom Himalay Singh, Member Consultative Committee, Manipur Government on Naga Peace Talks and former 16 Corps Commander. Tara Kartha has worked for a decade and a half plus in the National Security Council Secretariat in India. Professor Brahma Chilani is one of India's best known voices on national security and strategy. And I want to begin by asking you, Professor Chilani, how should India view Dhaka's increased engagement with Beijing, Professor Yunus meeting Xi Jinping and his statement on the 7 sisters?
The more we hear Muhammad Yunus, the more we should know that there is a government in Dhaka that is hostile to Indian interests. He is cultivating closer ties with both of India's regional adversaries, China and Pakistan. China, of course, is seeking to counterbalance India right in South Asia, right in India's own strategic backyard, by deepening its economic, military, and geopolitical influence in Bangladesh. China knows that the two forces behind the Yunus regime in Bangladesh are the Islamists and the military. So it's cultivating both the Islamists and the military. It hosted Jamaat and other Islamist leaders.
Yes.
Then it hosted Yunus himself. And it's working very actively to increase its military sales to Bangladesh and also expand its military training cooperation with the Bangladesh military.
So let's take this step by step, sir. I want to bring in General Himalay Singh into this conversation. 7 states of eastern India, the 7 sisters, are landlocked. They have no way to reach out to the ocean. We are the only guardians of the ocean, he says. How would you interpret this statement of Professor Muhammad Yunus? What are the implications?
Thank you for having me on the show. First of all, Muhammad Yunus stating, 7 sisters as a huge opportunity for extension of Chinese economy. I mean, something which is, I think our diplomats will know better. 7 sisters, a huge opportunity for extension of Chinese economy. They are landlocked. And also that guardians of the sea, guardians of the ocean. That's what, if I heard correctly.
Yes.
So it's a huge, from the security perspective, I would take it that it is part of a larger design by the Chinese, I think with the Chinese nudge, as part of the, I would say, the great game which is being played out between various powers, that is particularly the Chinese, and given the situation in Myanmar and Bangladesh and also in the northern borders, I take it extremely serious that this kind of a statement coming from Beijing.
Yes.
I mean, this is taken very lightly. And let me. I'm not talking about other issues, but I feel that Northeast India has the potential of becoming some kind of a battleground for this great power game going on.
God forbid, attempts have been made in Manipur, and very recently and who knows that better than you. But Dr. Tara Kartha, reports seem to suggest India gave Professor Muhammad Yunus a cold shoulder since he's not an elected leader in Bangladesh. India is happier keeping engagement at the diplomatic level instead of escalating it at the political level. One, is that a wise decision? Two, when there's this BIMSTEC meeting from the 2nd of April in Bangkok, how should India proceed?
I think Prime Minister Modi has already congratulated them on their National Day. He's making those overtures. The NSA has made the right. No, I mean not the NSA. I'm sorry. The Foreign
Foreign
Secretary
Secretary.
Ministry has said all the right things. So I think India is sort of, it's not closing doors. Definitely not. We have announced that visa centers will slowly open if they stop violence, right? You have to stop violence against our centers, and we will open them. And for them, it's easiest to come here for their medical, medical tourism, which is huge. It is really huge. But against that is, of course, those 3 Chinese hospitals which have been earmarked in Yunnan for getting, medical tourism that side. I, see these. Given that Yunus is an interim government, it's. I mean, I can't even call it an interim government. I don't know what it is,
Yes.
but we have to keep all our options open. And one option, what I want to point out is, while we have a very, very good amount of exports to Bangladesh, Bangladesh exports to India is very poor. There's a lot of difficulties on the ground which we can easily resolve. I think that is one direction we should go. His statement is pathetic. I mean, the statement which is made on Northeast is I mean, I don't know where that even comes from. But China will look to take advantage of it because of the geopolitical context, which I think Brahma has already discussed.
Yes.
The US problem, the issue of getting his trade out, the issue of the 21 billion investments already there. So they will use it regardless of what we do. They will use Bangladesh as an exit corridor. The
Okay.
point is whether you can then attract Bangladesh's investments and it also into India, give them an interest to cooperate with us. You know
Okay.
what I mean?
If they want medical attention, they should cooperate. If they want electricity, they should cooperate. But it seems they're happy to cut their nose to spite their face. And with Islamists taking center stage in Bangladesh, Professor Chilani, reports from Beijing also say Yunus used this meeting to highlight that 2024 so-called student protest or revolution that led to Sheikh Hasina government's ouster. He apparently is begging China to play a much bigger role in Bangladesh. So if he's an American stooge, if the Americans planted him there, how is it that he's trying to get China in? How would you view his request seeking Chinese support for water management for the next 50 years, calling China the master of water management?
You raise an interesting question. The Biden administration very clearly blessed the regime change in Dhaka. Muhammad Yunus is known to be close to the Democratic Party elites. He's a close friend of the Clintons. He's a friend of the Soroses. But since Donald Trump's return to the White House, there has been concern in Dhaka, concern in Yunus's circle, that the new administration in Washington would take a tough line toward Bangladesh, towards the interim regime. And Tulsi Gabbard, during her visit to New Delhi, did speak up on Bangladesh. So there is concern in Bangladesh that the Trump administration may not exactly be friendly towards the Yunus regime, which has encouraged the Yunus regime to adopt a hedging strategy. Therefore, this attempt to cultivate closer ties with China, because the alternative to the US in Bangladeshi perception is China. And they've always played this game of wooing China to counterbalance India. And we have seen that under successive Bangladeshi regimes. But now clearly, with Trump in office and the concern in Dhaka, they have reached out to China, and that is the main reason why Yunus went to Beijing. He's trying to show, even to Washington, that he has other options.
Okay. But does he truly have other options in case he was installed by the Democrats in that so-called regime change operation in Bangladesh? If he wants to be hostile to India and the US and still survive, Dr. Tarak Artha, because Bangladesh financially it's said to be in dire straits. Professor Yunus is begging Beijing to reduce interest rate on loan repayment. He's suggesting China make in Bangladesh. So whatever China wants to manufacture, it manufactures in Bangladesh to offset US tariffs. Now, is he a US asset? Is he a Chinese asset? And as you rightly pointed out, he's clearly no friend of India.
No, actually, I was looking at what the Chinese said. There is no statement from Beijing saying that we will, we'll waive loans or we'll bypass interest rates. They're not even saying we'll lower interest rates. They're saying, from what I've seen so far, they're saying we'll extend loans. If you extend loans, it's worse for the receiving country because your repayments then go up. If you remember, Hasina had gone looking for a 5 billion soft loan. She didn't get it.
She did. And that's why she came to India, and that is why it led to a regime change, as many say.
Exactly. So the Chinese, even that land for that project which they're talking of, has not yet been allotted. The Chinese are going to wait until to see what kind of a government comes in, whether there is political stability. I mean, when you talk of private investment, all that big talk in Beijing, no private company is going to invest unless there is stability in the country. So let's see where that goes. These are not, I mean, whatever Yunus says,
Okay.
this is hard commercial negotiations.
And the Chinese have already burnt their fingers once in Pakistan on the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Will they want to burn their fingers once again with Islamists on either side in Pakistan and in Bangladesh? But General Himalay is saying, how concerned should India be at this stage? First, ISI officers visiting Dhaka. Now Yunus visiting Beijing, inking those 9 agreements. What steps, in your view, can India take to prevent Bangladesh from perhaps drifting further into this Chinese orbit, especially after the signing of those bilateral agreements?
According to me, there are 4 very important concerns. One is the Tista, Tista project
yes.
that they have spoken about. Another is the Karnafuli River tunnel that they spoke about. Karnafuli River is a very important river which connects Mizoram and Bangladesh. And the third is the concern for the insurgent groups, which are now based in Yunnan province of China and upper Myanmar. There is a possibility of, these Indian insurgent groups shifting their bases to Bangladesh. And the last but not the least is the issue of radical elements,
Islamists,
getting more traction in the Northeast India. So if these 4, and each of these are of huge security concern for our country, and if that has to be addressed, I do believe that the first action, as some of our colleagues have said, has to be the diplomatic kind of activity and diplomatic offensive. Otherwise, we are not in a happy situation. The involvement of the ISI, involvement of so-called non-state actors of China. There are no non-state actors in China, I believe, and their involvement in Myanmar and in Bangladesh will put the entire Northeast into a little difficult position. As it is, the Chinese involvement are suspected, even in what is happening in our region. So,
yes.
yeah. So I think we have to be extremely cautious about in our diplomatic dealings, one, and in our security preparedness. And we have to be more concerned about the border management, because Bangladesh border, or whatever you say, it is a semi-porous kind of,
Absolutely. It's almost a national highway for infiltration. And Union Home Minister Amit Shah recently raised it in Bengal. Even now we are not getting land, he says, for building border outposts and fencing. it just shows national security implications. But Professor Chilani, is that also your appreciation, what General Himalay Singh said? You agree on all these 4 points, and what can and should India do to mitigate the risks that India faces?
Gaurav, look at the ground situation. India has still not even fenced 1/4 of its border with Bangladesh. The Bangladesh border guards managed to stop India from fencing. The problem of Bangladesh will get only worse. The civil war in Myanmar is already making things difficult for India, especially in Manipur, because of the spillover effects. Even the drones and militants with arms are entering Manipur and other parts of the northeast. Then you have the Chinese interest in destabilizing India's northeast. After all, it was China that trained the first Naga guerrillas. It's the Chinese today who harbor Paresh Barua and other insurgents from India's northeast. And then you have Muhammad Yunus from Chinese soil talking about 7 landlocked sisters of India's northeast. All these are warning signs, and one wonders what India's policy and strategy are in relation to these threats that are emerging. We will be watching very carefully as to whether in the next few days during the BIMSTEC summit, and it appears that the BIMSTEC summit is going ahead despite the devastating earthquake in Myanmar and also the impact in Bangkok. We will have to see whether Modi will meet with Muhammad Yunus on the sidelines of the BIMSTEC summit, as Yunus has sought. He has sought such a bilateral meeting with Modi. We will have to wait and see whether Modi will grant him such a meeting.
Okay, Dr. Tara Kartha, your appreciation of what India's diplomatic strategy should be, and this BIMSTEC summit in Bangkok, is that a way to counterbalance Yunus's China tilt and once again ensure that Bangladesh is back in India's orbit like it was during Sheikh Hasina's times?
See, in the end, you're the neighbor. You're the closest neighbor. Nothing can change that. So they have to jolly well live with that. BIMSTEC, I think India is going to use very, what shall I say? This is Modi's government is pretty pragmatic. They don't go out on, sentimental issues. They go out and see where you can do business. So they will probably use that as a platform, keeping in mind, however, that this government is not going to be friendly to us. Yunus and his crowd have been consistently, without any exception, though one or two noises have been made. But then, as far as we're concerned, they're not the government. Someone else is coming. There is the students' leaders saying all sorts of things against us. But remember one thing. See, in our neighboring states, it is politically very nice to say bad things about India. That's what they do. But in the end, you sort of come around, you come around and you stabilize things. But you can expect this anti-India diatribe to continue till election. So we'll just have to live with that.
Have to live with it and see when and if elections are held in Bangladesh and who comes to power. We'll track that story very, very closely. As always, General Himalay Singh, Professor Brahma Chelani and Dr. Tara Kartha for joining me here on India Today. Many thanks. That is all I have for you on this special broadcast. Many thanks for watching. News and updates continue on India Today. Stay with us.